Good evening, everyone. My name is Deanna Bremer Fisher. I'm the Executive Director of Future Heights and a member of the League of Women Voters. I'm excited to welcome you to the first debate between the two candidates who are vying to become our city's first directly elected mayor. While we have co-hosted many candidates forums in years past, this event is different in that we are using a debate format where we are encouraging the candidates to directly respond to each other. We think that this is an important way for the public to really get to know the candidates during this historic election. That said, I want to acknowledge how challenging it was to put together this debate. It has been challenging for many reasons, not the least of which is the pandemic. We owe a lot of thanks to our co-hosts, Heights Libraries, for providing this venue, and the League of Women Voters for their expertise and outstanding volunteers. Thank you to our candidates for your willingness to participate. And thank you to all of you who are watching this program for making a concerted effort to become fully informed voters for this important local election. As you know, local government has a major and direct impact on our daily lives. A little bit about Future Heights. We are a nonprofit community development corporation serving Cleveland Heights and University Heights and dedicated to promoting a vibrant and sustainable future for our community through communication, collaboration, engagement, and empowerment. We publish the Heights Observer community newspaper and seek to provide Heights residents with information to make informed decisions. Future Heights and the Heights Observer do not and have not endorsed any candidates for office. You can find more information about local elections that pertain to residents of Cleveland Heights and in the printed copy of the Voter's Guide for the November 2nd election, which is in the October issue of the Heights Observer. It is an insert into the October issue, which you can find available free around town. You can also find this information online at heightsobserver.org. Our work is made possible by donations from the community, and we encourage you to learn more and become involved by visiting futureheights.org. And I'd now like to introduce the League's Blanche Valancy to say a few words.
Thank you, Deanna. Good evening. I'm Blanche Valancy from the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland, Cleveland Heights University Heights chapter. The League of Women Voters, a truly nonpartisan political organization, does not endorse candidates or support political parties, although it does take positions on issues. League of Women Voters is recognized for its impartiality and its respected role promoting informed and active participation in government and advocating for good government policies. The League is valued by voters and by candidates and elected officials because it insists upon and makes possible the fair exchange and expression of views upon which democracy depends. The work that the League does is made possible by membership dues and donations and the dedication of League volunteers. If you are not a member, we encourage you to join or to donate. Membership forms can be found online at our website, www.lwvgreatercleveland.org. I would like to thank the many members of the League who have worked so hard to organize this debate, and would like especially to thank Michael Barron for coordinating the technical side of the evening. The recording of this forum will be made available on the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland's website, which has a link to our YouTube channel. And at that same YouTube channel, you can find all the other forums we have presented this election season. With that, I would like to introduce our moderator for this evening's debate, Sarah Schiavone. Sarah Schiavone is a professor in the Department of Political Science at John Carroll University, where she's taught for 19 years. Her focus is on American politics, specifically the federal courts, and she regularly publishes about the federal judicial nomination and confirmation process. She sits on the board of the Shaker chapter of the League of Women Voters. She also works with the Ohio Innocence Project, and through that relationship has developed a class on wrongful convictions at John Carroll, which is one of her favorites to teach. She is active in city government in her home city of Shaker Heights, where she was previously a citizen representative on the Recreation Committee and currently sits on the city's Safety and Public Works Committee. She is thrilled to be participating in this event. I give you Sarah Schiavone.
Thanks, Blanche. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we will hear from the two candidates for Cleveland Heights Mayor, Barbara Danforth and Kahlil Seren. The mayor will serve as the chief executive of the city, overseeing all departments and divisions of city government. The mayor will also serve as the director of public safety. It's a 4-year term and pays $115,000 per year. Before we begin the debate tonight, let's review the rules. The candidates have flipped a coin to determine their speaking order for the opening and closing statements, as well as who will go first in the Q&A. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement and 2 minutes for a closing statement after a question and answer period. Time limits will be enforced by our timers who are in the room. For the Q&A, questions received in advance have been sorted into various categories. I will pose a question to one candidate who will have 1 minute to respond. The other candidate will also have 1 minute to respond to the initial question, and then the first candidate will have 30 seconds, if they wish, to respond to the other candidate's initial response. Following the questions received in advance, we'll have a 10-minute period for questions received during the live debate. Only written questions will be accepted, and if you would like to submit a question to the candidates during live debate, please send it via email to heights@lwvgreatercleveland.org. I'll repeat that. It's heights@lwvgreatercleveland.org. The email inbox is being monitored. League screeners will review submitted questions, not to block opinions or skew information, but in order to avoid duplication, provide a diversity of questions, and ensure readability and appropriateness. Okay. And for now, we'd like to hear from the candidates' opening statements. By coin flip, we will first hear from Kahlil, followed by Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm here to share my ideas to lead our community forward. Residents have elected me twice, and I've risen to city council leadership. I've earned that trust by being forthright, honest, and by always fighting to make our community better, safer, stronger, more vibrant, and more supportive of every resident. Our new government structure is both a challenge and an opportunity, one I'm uniquely qualified to face. I am a battle-tested public servant, having already led the transformation of the largest government in the county. 22 organizations, 15 elected officials, and counting, have endorsed me for my experience, my integrity, and my bedrock commitment to building a better future for and with our residents. From day one as mayor, I'm ready to lead our community forward. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in tonight's debate.
My name is Barbara Danforth, and I am running for mayor of the city of Cleveland Heights. And oh, what a campaign this has been. Throughout my campaign, I have talked about how hard the work was going to be for the first mayor. The city has a budget of $62 million. It has more than 400 full-time and seasonal employees. So what do I want you to know about me? I have managed budgets as small as $5 million and as large as $65 million. I have recruited, screened, and assisted companies in hiring key staff. I've served in the cabinet of an elected mayor. I have worked closely with boards of directors. I have had ultimate accountability for the organizations that I have led. And now I want to bring my experience and my skills to Cleveland Heights to facilitate an efficient and effective transition, because we will only have one chance to make this transition in our government. How we make this transition will impact us not just for years, but for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll have a question and answer period. I remind the candidates to please stay within the allotted time period of 1 minute for each response and 30 seconds for a final follow-up response. So the questions were organized so that we're not jumping around too much. let's begin with a couple of questions regarding the mayor's role and the transition to new governance. So Kahlil, this first question is for you by the coin toss. What do you hope to accomplish in your first year in office as the first mayor of Cleveland Heights?
I think initially, the primary goal and the underlying function of the new mayor will be to create capacity in the administration in order to achieve the goals that we have for our government. That means staffing up. That means instituting systems of professional development. It means instituting systems of performance improvement. And frankly, organizational performance monitoring and management. I think that one of the key roles of the mayor is to ensure that what the mayor leaves behind is sustainable and benefits the community and the government well beyond the mayor's tenure. And I intend to implement those systems immediately upon my taking the office.
The role of the mayor essentially is about the first mayor, about restructuring the government. But of equal and perhaps greater importance is about transitioning the culture. The city staff and the mayor are public servants, and the residents are the public, and they are entitled to be served well. And so this is going to require a transition in culture, such that the residents understand that this is their government and that they have a right to have their questions answered. They have a right to call City Hall. They have a right to call upon their council people and have responses. But one of the roles of the first mayor is really to embed this culture of resident focus into our entire city government. Two functions: one, to restructure the government; two, to transition the culture.
Kahlil, you have a 30-second response.
30-second response, thank you. So I think that one of the things that people fail to understand about systems change, and the systems change that we will be encountering next year, I've experienced this at the county level. When you create systems that allow for buy-in from residents, from employees of the city, you create that culture change as you create the systems change. And so I wanted to make sure that that culture change is present in the systems change that we're looking forward to next year.
Thank you. Barbara, this question will start with you.
Mm-hmm.
Council charged city staff to create a plan for the transition to the new government. Have you seen that plan? And if so, do you intend to implement any or all of the recommendations? Are there any recommendations you do not like?
I have seen parts of the plan, and actually a little troubled because not only a plan, but there needs to be a charter review that needs to do a lot of revision within the existing structure. Now, Administrative Services Department had a responsibility to do some of the charter review revisions, and many of those have not yet happened. So at the moment, there is really not a comprehensive plan upon how this change fundamentally and structurally is going to occur. And that is unfortunate because we are now less than 60 days, 90 days away from the beginning of the new government. And yet all of these details have not even yet been worked out by council.
So as of yet, there is no comprehensive transition plan put forward by the administration. We've received some information about departments. I believe Barbara Danforth has also received a booklet indicating the structure of our departments. But in terms of a plan for attacking the transition, there has not been one floated by the administration. I believe that it is incumbent on the mayor to work with council very directly and very proactively in order to create a transition plan, in order to provide administrative support for the council while it determines the support that it needs to create for its own office, so that we can get transition to more charter amendments on the ballot to provide for a bit more of the change that we need to see, ordinance changes. And frankly, I think that it really requires expertise on the part of the mayor in order to shepherd that. I have that expertise both in terms of charter changes at the city level and professionally at the county level.
I would have hoped that council would have been more involved in setting up a timeline and a plan to have all these revisions done in a timely manner. So from that perspective, that is disappointing. Last night in council, there was a conversation about when it might happen, and it is still yet a couple of weeks away. Again, I think with better leadership within council, we could have had all of this work done so that we are fully prepared, even from a structural perspective, to move forward in the new structure of our government.
Thank you. Kahlil, we'll begin with you.
All right.
The charter requires the hiring of a city administrator. How would you divide responsibilities with the city administrator?
So I think it's important to recognize that the duty of administering the government of Cleveland Heights will fall directly on the mayor. Now, a city administrator, I believe, is an important role that I advocated for long before the charter change initiative was even thought of. If you look back at the Charter Review Commission meetings, I was interviewed and I proposed a blended system similar to Shaker Heights with a mayor and a charter required city administrator. Now, at the time and at this point, I believe that that management function is an important function to have in a professional staff so that you can get the best of both worlds: leadership from the policy perspective and from the political perspective in a mayor, and then management in a city administrator. That city administrator, in my view, also needs to have some experience in change management and process improvement in order to fully realize the benefit of this new government.
Someone once told me that the city administrator has to make sure that the trains move on time, but the mayor makes sure that the trains are in place. And I think that's an interesting distinction, because the mayor has to have the big picture. The mayor has to have the vision. The mayor has to be the driving force behind getting things done. But the day-to-day operations must be left to a city administrator, because a mayor has a twofold job. It's not only in-facing to make sure that there is an efficient and effective operation of the city, but also needs to be out-facing and communicating with cities and mayors that are in our contiguous cities, to be talking to the county, the state, the federal government, just to make sure that we are maximizing all the resources that are going to be available to come into the city. But ultimately, visionary to see the big picture, and a resource getter as the mayor looks out around to just increase the resources and the capacity that will be available to the city.
30 seconds. Well, I'm glad that Ms. Danforth brought that up. I've spent the better part, actually more than a decade at this point, providing those resources to cities throughout our county. Being that resource in collaboration with the state government, with federal funds, with nonprofit charitable organizations, providing support to communities just like ours. That has benefited Cleveland Heights residents for the last 10 years. That outward facing, those connections, that piece is an integral part and a valuable part of what I bring to the table.
Thank you. Barbara, this question is for you. A recurring theme during public comment at council meetings is that citizens do not feel that council listens to their viewpoints. Have you planned a mechanism for citizens to raise concerns with the council and mayor, and for follow-up on those issues? Will you implement your plan in the first 100 days of your administration?
Yes, I have a plan. And my plan is to create a mayor's hotline. And that will be done as soon as I can put together the logistics of how that will work. These will not be random calls into the mayor, but I envision perhaps 2 nights during the week, a Tuesday, a Thursday, from perhaps 4 to 6 p.m. If you have a question, if a resident has a concern or a complaint, they will have an opportunity to send me an email, to tell me their name, to tell me what the issue is, and then they will be assigned a 10 or 15-minute slot of time that I will devote to listening to what their issue is. And then after I listen to what the issue or complaint is and make sure that I clearly understand it, I will then go back to the city staff, get an answer, get a response, get some understanding, and then I commit to making a response to the resident. Too often I've heard residents say that they've called City Hall, they've asked a question, they've not gotten a response. At City Council, Committee of the Whole last night, there was a woman there who had an issue, but there was nobody there for her to talk to, no one to get an answer from. Under my administration, that will change immediately.
So as I stated earlier, it is important for the mayor to create systems that don't depend on the mayor that's in office, systems that last beyond the mayor's tenure. I've had experience working in the Mayor's Action Center in the city of Cleveland ages ago, and the experience taught me that what you measure, you can manage. Taking calls from residents, tracking those calls, logging those calls in a database, ensuring that departmental response is appropriate, and then following back up with those residents was valuable experience that taught me that government can address the needs of the people that it serves. But in Cleveland Heights, we need to implement the same kind of system with 21st century technology to track, monitor, and then revise our processes so that we are addressing the residents' concerns in a timely basis. Coupling that Mayor's Action Center with that tracking software that we're already using through our Access Cleveland Heights app, and then coupling that with a performance stat program to make sure that we are tracking and responding in an appropriate way. That's how you create a system that lasts beyond the mayor's tenure and you address the needs of the residents.
I actually agree that systems are important, but we're talking about when the mayor starts, when the mayor has a blank slate and has to create the government. And how do we do that efficiently and effectively? We immediately reach out to the residents and get not secondhand system kind of information, but direct information from our residents. And it's also a matter of just not getting complaints and concerns, but it's also beginning to build trust between the new mayor and the residents. So as we look at that first 90, 100 days, that's when I am looking forward to having that direct communication with our residents.
Thank you. Kahlil, this question is for you. Although the school districts that serve Cleveland Heights, University Heights, and East Cleveland, are an independently governing entity, do you feel that the mayor has a role in assuring educational opportunities for the children in our community? And if so, what is that role?
I believe that the mayor has an absolutely vital role because their children are our children. And we need to be looking out for the opportunity, at both educational opportunity in the formal setting of the school, but also in the wider community, beyond the school district, beyond the school's walls. I think that it's incumbent on the mayor to provide opportunities for our kids to showcase what they can do, to be allowed experiential learning in order to really show the community the benefits of these public schools, especially because I think that we need to be strong partners with our public school systems in a primary way. And beyond that, I think that we need to allow those kids a voice in our community, provide that platform for them to come to us with their ideas, because frankly, they will experience the consequences of our decision-making for much longer than we will.
When I met with Superintendent Kirby a couple of months ago, I asked her, what do you want from the new mayor? And she said, I just want more support. I want to know that you really are supporting and advocating on our behalf. And I shared with her, one of my concerns is that the school district communicates effectively with parents of students. But for adults that do not have children in the system, we often don't know what's going on within the school system, and there are amazing things that have gone on. My husband and I had the privilege of hosting 2 foreign exchange students, and we knew everything that was going on. But as soon as our girls left us, we heard no more from the school system. And inasmuch as all of our taxes support the schools, I suggested to her that there needed to be more intentional communication with everyone, but offered to her the assistance and the support of the city in helping those communications get out to everyone. Because it's only when the city and the school district and the libraries work together that we can be the best that all of us can be for the children who are entitled to excellent service.
All right, 30 seconds. So I've participated in the creation of a variety of programs that help students throughout our county. Scholarship programs, mentorship services. These are the kinds of programs that non-school district entities, government entities can participate in order to add value to the experience that people have sending their kids to school. Scholarship programs are important, but I think I want to emphasize that there are other ways that we can partner. Taking Shaker as a model, looking at their collaborative approach with their school system and library district. That's a method that I think we need to follow as well.
Thank you. Barbara, we'll start with you. Please discuss your views on the LGBTQ community. Do you feel that equality for LGBTQ people is important? If so, what policies can be developed to ensure their equality?
First, let me state unequivocally that I support the rights of the LGBTQIA+ community and the rights of the transgender community to use the bathrooms of their choice. When I started this campaign, I decided to use our model. All are welcome. In guiding my approach to how I would govern our city, and from the beginning, I was clear about my support of the LGBTQIA+ rights, including bathroom access. But where I struggled was with the consideration of how communities live together, respecting each other's civil rights, religious beliefs, and traditions. I had some conversations, recognized within the diversity of our city, we can live and work together in harmony. I know that I can respect everyone's human rights, civil rights, customs, traditions, and perspectives, even when those perspectives differ from mine.
Thank you.
Leading-
I'm sorry, we're at 1 minute. I'm sorry. Kahlil.
So this has been a topic of conversation in our wider community as the result of some information that was shared about an endorsement interview with Cleveland Stonewall Democrats. I think that it's important for me to express that I was appalled, I think, a bit by some of the things that I've heard and read related to this topic. I want to state very clearly that I think it is important for the mayor to be a vigorous advocate to fight for the rights of the people in this city without hesitation, without concern for the comfort of people whose rights are not being threatened. And that goes for every population in this city. I will not ask for permission to fight for your rights. I will not ask whether or not this makes someone uncomfortable. I will fight for every single one of our residents' rights, and the LGBTQ community is no exception.
Leading a diverse community is challenging, but if done effectively, it brings great rewards in mutual understanding and unity. And I want to be the mayor of the city in which all are truly welcome. And if we are invested in respect and understanding, then sometimes forgiveness is mandated.
We'll move on to questions about economic development. Kahlil, this first question is for you.
All right.
Cleveland Heights has one of the highest property tax rates in the state, and the 2020 census shows a continued decline in population. What is your plan to strengthen our tax base and provide relief for the tax burden on residents?
So a community like Cleveland Heights, and I'll be candid with the viewers, a community like Cleveland Heights is very heavily skewed toward residential properties, less so toward commercial and industrial properties. There are communities that are close by that have different ratios of the types of properties and land uses, but our community is special, and it is what it is. And so we have to work within those constraints. So I don't want to provide any false hope about dramatically changing the structure of our community in order to change the ratio in some significant way that affects property taxes. But I think that with a concentrated approach to economic development, making sure that we are focusing on the business districts that need the most support in Noble, in Taylor, providing support to home-based businesses and small businesses, we can grow our commercial sector. We can start the process that will eventually lead to that rebalancing.
Would you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Cleveland Heights has one of the highest property tax rates in the state, and the 2020 census shows a continued decline in population. What is your plan to strengthen our tax base and provide relief for the tax burden on residents?
We're talking about new home construction to bring in new families and be attractive to new families. We are talking about commercial development. But what we are talking about, even more importantly, is the urgency with which this work needs to be done. As we look around our surrounding cities, the other suburbs, we find ourselves falling behind in population, in economic development, and that has to stop immediately. We need to quickly develop plans. We need to quickly understand what the needs of our residents are, and we need to develop timelines so that we can get this work done urgently. This is what the residents voted for. They voted for change because they are tired of the rhetoric and they're ready for some results. That's why we need to change this government, and that's why we need new leadership to lead us with urgency to get to those results.
I think results are important. And the way that you get results is by doing the work of economic development, the work of community development, the work that I've been engaged in for the last 10 years, vetting economic development deals, negotiating those deals, providing funding to residential and commercial developments, making sure that those developments work both for the developer and for the community that the development is located in. It's expertise that's required to make sure that that works the way it's supposed to, and I provide that expertise.
But further to your earlier
I'm
point.
so sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Was
We're just going to do one response.
Okay, so he had I'm sorry, his response?
I apologize. You're right. You have 30 seconds to respond
Okay.
to the response.
All right.
Thank you.
I believe I had the 30-second. There are two responses, or?
Khalil had the.
I had the
You had
first.
the question.
Yes. So then Barbara has a 1-minute response, and then Khalil has the 30-second follow-up.
Is that right? Okay.
That is correct.
All right. So again, I'm sorry, I've lost the question.
We've got a new question.
Yeah,
going to
we're
the
starting
next
with a new
one.
question. Starting all over with a
Okay.
brand new question.
Okay.
Same economic development topic, though.
Mhm.
We'll start all over.
Okay,
Okay. So Barbara, now we're starting with you.
okay.
What is your stance on the debate between building a park versus building a mixed-use complex at the Meadowbrook Cedar Lee site? Is there currently a demand for this type of living space in Cleveland Heights?
I'm in favor of the project at the Lee Meadowbrook site. Our business district in the Lee Meadowbrook area needs support of additional residents. All of our business districts have suffered somewhat during the pandemic and even before the pandemic, and it is important to now put more residents who are going to be walking and visiting our shops and visiting our restaurants and spending their money and enjoying the business district. So I am in favor of that project. Looking, and there's been design that will provide some preservation of green space. But if we are to manage our tax burden, we have to continue to have revenue generating enterprises in our city. And yes, there is evidence that there is an adequate market demand for this kind of construction, new housing construction, and I'm in favor of it.
All right, so since this debate started, I have said that I believe that a well-designed, well-executed park space that is consistently and well-programmed by the city or nonprofits who do such things, that could be a good idea, could be a benefit to the business district. So I don't want to, cast that in an unfavorable light, but I want to make it clear that I don't think that's the best idea for this particular parcel. I think a more consistent development with new residents, with consistent businesses that are in line with the business district will create more activity in the business district, more customers for Zagaras, more excitement in the evenings, more 24/7 living in that business district. And it will also fill in a hole in our business district that has long inhibited the success of that stretch of Lee Road. So I'm in favor of that development, and I'm looking forward to see how we negotiate the next step.
I think we're in agreement on this issue.
Fantastic. So Khalil, we'll start with you, please.
All right.
Do you feel that community engagement is important for evaluating development proposals? If yes, how and when would you facilitate that engagement?
So I think that a constant set of communications needs to be had between the administration of this government and the people of our community. And another set of conversations needs to be had between the administration and developers throughout the community, throughout the region, in order to find out what we want to see in Cleveland Heights and what is possible and financially feasible for developers to participate in Cleveland Heights. When you're having those conversations on a constant basis, you can take that Venn diagram and take a look at where it overlaps, what's feasible, what's desirable. And that's where you choose your development projects. That's how you design your RFPs and look for development partners, with that constant conversation with the people in mind. So I think that that conversation is happening all the time. It needs to happen before we've got an RFP. It needs to happen while we're designing the RFP. That can be a more public process. That's the kind of public process that I'd like to implement as mayor of Cleveland Heights.
Community engagement is critically important. This is the resident city, and they need to have a voice in every major development project that's going on. And from a chronology, I think when we are getting ready to do a major project, let's talk about Severance. And there have been several meetings and studies and experts and consultants brought in about what to do with Severance. But let's listen to what the residents wanted, and let's get their list of their best ideas. And then I agree, the next step is to talk to the developers, because then we have to understand what's possible. And then we have to even have the financial institutions part of the conversation, because it's not just what the developers can do. Where will they be able to get financing? And all along the way, as new information is developing, that the city has a responsibility to share that new information with the residents so that they understand the process of making the decision. So as we have the conversation with the developers, some of the projects that the residents wanted won't work, but we keep working through with full communication.
I have no need to respond.
Okay. We'll move on to the topic of housing. And Barbara, this question is for you. Housing and housing upkeep, the escrow requirements for major repairs, and negligent out-of-state landlords are issues in Cleveland Heights. How will you keep our existing housing stock in good repair and an asset? Please address your views on point of sale inspections and foreclosure bond as a part of the tool chest to encourage housing code compliance.
Well, let's start at the very basic issue and talk about the housing services that currently exist. They need to be updated and upgraded. And over a year ago, there was a NOVAC report created and presented to council, but there's been very little forward progress on that report, which is unfortunate because our housing stock is one of our most important assets. So our codes need to be updated. Some of them haven't been updated in over 50 years. Our method of inspections need to be more consistent. Point of sale needs interior and exterior needs to remain in place for right now, because right now our systemic inspections are every 5 years. And in 5 years' time, a home can go from fair condition to poor condition. If we had 3-year annual or 3-year systematic inspections, then point of sale could be further discussed in terms of its need. But as we stand now, we need to keep point of sale in place.
So residential development, ensuring that blighted houses no longer plague our neighborhoods is work that I have participated in a central role in county government. I've created the $50 million demolition program at the county, also the $30 million housing program at the county that seeks to pick up where the demolition program left off and start rebuilding, start revitalizing our neighborhoods. Currently, a member of a subcommittee looking at community revitalization, working with our banks to figure out how we can recruit them into community reinvestment a little bit more effectively. That's the kind of work that needs to happen. We need to keep the tools in place that are working and strengthen them through that process improvement, including citizen serve software, which I helped to shepherd into Cleveland Heights government, but also community development function to augment our housing inspection.
Kahlil, I respect your expertise in housing and that whole area. And yet I look at our city right now, and we have hundreds of abandoned homes and homes that are owned by absentee landlords that are in a despicable condition. And so even with all of your expertise, we still have these fundamental problems with our housing stock. And therein lies a problem that once again goes back to what I talked about, the urgency that is needed and the kind of courageous leadership that is required to enhance our housing stock.
Kahlil, one more question on housing.
All right.
Will you support and prioritize implementing a, quote, problem property team, unquote, to address seriously blighted investor-owned properties in neighborhoods most at risk? And will you commit that the team will include at minimum the manager of housing, a representative from both the law department and housing court, and the community liaison if or when the position is filled?
So I think that that is part of a larger comprehensive strategy, having a problem property team. The work that I've done with the Vacant and Abandoned Properties Action Council has highlighted the need for a focus on investors that are not responsible in our community, making sure that we have a line on exactly what the state of our properties is in the city of Cleveland Heights. I will work with the Western Reserve Land Conservancy and Thriving Communities Institute in order to do a full property survey, residential property survey in our city, in order to make sure that we have up-to-date information about the condition and status of all of the homes in our community. Starting there with that baseline, we can make sure we are focusing on exactly that problem, those problem properties that are dragging our neighborhoods down. Reach out to the county land bank, reach out to county government in order to receive the resources that we need in order to fix those problems. I think that that's exactly a great idea and part of my comprehensive strategy.
I agree that these are things that we need to have done and will get done. But I'm challenged by the fact that the Novak report was presented to council over a year ago, and yet we've made so little forward progress on any of these areas. And again, with the land bank, I've had an opportunity to talk to Jim Rokakis and Gus Frango, sat down in his office, and we talked about how do we move these abandoned properties quickly, efficiently, and effectively from being abandoned to back on the market. And they explained to me that this can be done not easily, but certainly more quickly than it used to be done in the future. So how do we now have the courageous, skilled, experienced leadership that we need to take what is available to us in terms of tools and resources and actually use it to the betterment of our city and the betterment of our housing stock? We have waited too long to do what needs to be done.
So my service on the board of the land bank, serving in the council president's stead, my service on the VAPAC Action Committee, and my service on the staff of County Council to help alleviate these concerns is exactly why I'm running for mayor, because we need someone with my expertise to attack these problems in the proactive way that we do at the county, that we do at the land bank. Taking this from a legislative to an administrative executive role is exactly the change that Cleveland Heights needs in order to urgently address these problems.
Thank you. We'll shift to issues of infrastructure and sustainability. And Barbara, this question is for you. Do you support outsourcing or privatizing city services? And if so, which services?
No, I don't support it. The best work that I've ever seen done was done by people who are invested in the city, who are invested in their employment, who are invested in the residents of the city. So no, I do not support outsourcing. However, having said that, there are times when outsourcing is necessary, when we are unable to attract the kind of talent, the kind of skills, the kind of certified people who are available to do the work that we need to do on occasion, and hopefully always temporarily, although that hasn't been the case necessarily in the past here. But on occasion, it is necessary to outsource, but it should always be temporary, and we should always be putting ourselves in the position to bring those positions back in-house, because that is clearly the best way that that work gets done.
So it's been a central tenet of my candidacy that we need to build capacity in-house in the government in order to achieve those basic municipal functions at a level that our citizens deserve, and then go further. So I believe that generally it is absolutely not the best option to outsource our city services in those occasions when there is some emergency, some illness that wreaks havoc on a department, and we need to temporarily farm that function out to a private service, we need to develop a plan immediately along with that contract to rebuild the capacity. And I believe that it is important for the administration and the council to review that plan when we're looking at any of these outsourcing contracts that may come up on occasion.
Once again, I think we're in agreement.
Fantastic. So we'll start with Kahlil. Do you have any plans for a local action on global climate change?
Absolutely. I think my introduction and council's passage of our Power a Clean Future Ohio legislation, setting a 30% reduction in our carbon emissions by the year 2030, and creating that partnership with Power a Clean Future Ohio in order to implement the necessary programs that we need to reach that goal and reach other goals that we set. That is a hallmark of sort of where we need to go, implementing cost-effective measures to reduce our carbon emissions, to increase our renewable energy use, and reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. I believe that the city can be bold. Local government can lead the way on climate change in Ohio, because we cannot rely on the state of Ohio to help us with this. So we need to band together with Lakewood, band together with our neighboring cities on this side of town as well, and work toward reducing our fossil fuel use and reducing our carbon emissions.
I agree with the 30-30 plan that we reduce 30% in 30 years. But the more important question is, what are we going to do in the next 12 months? And I'll tell you what I'm going to do in the next 12 months. I'm going to create a task force within the city on sustainability. They will include folks who have expertise from our city, expertise in clean energy, clean water, solar energy, preservation of our green space, recyclables, our tree canopy, have expertise in all those areas. And what will this task force, what will these members do? One, they will help us train all of our staff so that sustainability becomes embedded in our culture. They will help train or educate our residents so that residents can understand day to day what things they can do to begin to reduce our carbon footprint. And so this task force is going to start to work right away so that we're not waiting 25 years to figure out how we meet that 30-30 plan. We're going to start on day one and figure out what are we going to do in the first 12 months.
All right. So going back to expertise and experience in doing this work, I designed the county's Department of Sustainability and worked with that department to create programs that have directly benefited Cleveland Heights, putting solar panels on 3 of our facilities, cutting our energy use in half. This is the kind of work that we can implement immediately. I believe that it's important to have residents who are participating and advising. We do have a transportation committee that is converting to a transportation and sustainability committee that we can rely on as well. But that expertise needs to be in-house.
Barbara, this question is for you. And this, as a resident of Shaker Heights, this is of interest to me. Where do you stand on the sewer district's recommendation to remove the dam at Horseshoe Lake, restore Doan Brook to its natural state, and replace the dam at Lower Lake?
Horseshoe Lake was a beautiful asset, and it's really very sad that it's no longer in existence right now. But where I stand on it is really where the city is finally moving to, city council has finally moved to. And that is to hire an engineering firm to do a peer review of the sewer district's research and recommendations. I appreciate that the sewer district has done a comprehensive review based on their master plan. But what we don't know yet is what is in the best interest of our city and in the best interest of Shaker Heights. So at the moment, there is an engineering firm that is working on a peer review. And once we have that peer review, then we will know how to move forward. But if it comes down to a finding that the sewer district's recommendation is really our only option and a $20 million investment is required, our cities collectively, I do not believe, would be the best investment of those dollars.
So I've been very clear that I don't see a path to saving that lovely amenity in a neighborhood close to mine. I believe that Horseshoe Lake is beautiful and I've enjoyed it for years, but There are needs that our city has in other areas, in Noble, in Taylor, where $20 million to preserve a lake would be better spent building up areas that have been neglected. I think that it's important for us to allow for possibilities, but also recognize the financial realities that we are facing. I would love for there to be a path to keep Horseshoe Lake. I don't see one now. I had a conversation earlier today with a gentleman that would like to find a path, looking toward sources of funds that might be useful in maintaining the lake. And if that is a possibility and the sustainability and ecological issues aren't a barrier, I would love to pursue it. But right now, I don't see a possibility.
One of the things that will be incumbent upon the results of this study is really communicating clearly with our residents about what this report has said, what it means, and what our going forward position is going to be. I suspect that however this report comes out, there will be people who are disappointed, will be disappointed in the final outcome, will be disappointed in the final decisions. And that's going to happen so often in many of the issues that our city is confronted with. But we have an obligation to really be clear with our residents in terms of the communication.
We'll move on to the topic of public safety. Kahlil, we'll start with you. There are many in our community who are concerned about public safety and policing. Could you please clarify your position on policing and whether you wish to defund the police?
All right, well, thank you for the question. I would like to take this opportunity to be very clear. I have never, and I do not now, advocate for defunding the Cleveland Heights Police. I believe that strong policing is an important part of a comprehensive public safety strategy that includes that response to crime and investigation and sort of holding people accountable for the acts that endanger our safety, but also those activities that the city can pursue and support that prevent crime. Things from speed tables to reduce speeding, to violence interruption so that disputes and altercations don't spiral out of control. Things like connecting people to job training and placement services so that poverty as a precursor to crime can be forestalled. That's the work that we need to do on a multi-pronged approach, strengthening our policing, but also strengthening those prevention approaches too.
But Kahlil, you signed off on a letter that recommended the reduction of the police budget by a certain percentage. And that's disconcerting to me as the former chief prosecutor of the city of Cleveland. One, I understand how hard the job is of police work right now, harder now than it's ever been. And there are so many issues that our police officers need to be dealing with. First of all, within our city, we are down the number of officers that we should have. Our chief of police is getting ready to retire at the end of the year. So there are many issues that we really need to deal with. And now is not the time to be reducing the budget by any amount. There are safety issues that are growing in our city. And so we need to be formulating and developing and supporting our police department so that it is providing safety and providing protection to the most vulnerable of our residents. Whether they are victims of domestic violence, whether they are residents who are challenged by mental health issues, they need the support and the protection of our police force in its full presence.
Ms. Danforth, that's a cheap stunt, and you know that that's not true.
No, I
I
don't.
signed on to a letter in the summer of 2020 to the major city Chiefs Association, including Cleveland, Los Angeles, very clearly not including Cleveland Heights, asking their chiefs to consider using 5% toward prevention, toward crime prevention, 5% of their police budget in the city of Cleveland. But I think that this speaks to a larger point and something that you just expressed. The idea that you equate policing in 1990
I'm sorry.
in
thanks.
Cleveland with policing in Cleveland Heights in 2021 is an astonishing lack of self-awareness.
Barbara, this question is for you. What specific actions should the mayor and council authorize to carry out the Vision Zero policy council recently adopted for our community? and to enable achieving the goal of zero traffic fatalities and severe injuries. What is the role of the mayor and what is the role of council with this initiative?
Well, it's interesting about resolutions that our council passes because sometimes it feels like these resolutions are passed and they just go into, I don't know where. But that is a critically important consideration because statistics show the number of deaths that are occurring as a result of traffic incidents. So what are some of the things we need to do? We need to have safer bike paths. We have a city that we need to continue to build our bike lanes. As people are getting more interested in biking, we need to make sure that that happens. And then we need to really take a hard look at our streets and our traffic designs to make sure that they are as strong and as safe as they can be. If necessary, bringing in outside resources, both financial and expertise, to look at our traffic patterns and to help us facilitate a community that from a traffic perspective is as safe as it can possibly be. A very important initiative that we need to put some planning and some expertise behind.
All right. So I believe that the Vision Zero policy resolution at the city is an important first step toward realizing the importance of multimodal transportation, a complete and green streets policy. That's the work that we've been doing, and the next step is implementation. So creating environmental changes in our traffic, like I said earlier, speed tables, street narrowing, neck downs to reduce speeding. These are the things that make all of us safer. Providing design changes to crosswalks in order to make sure that it's not a huge stretch of 7 lanes in order to get from one side to the other for our kids on their ways to school. Providing those bike lanes. I worked pretty tirelessly to try to get bike lanes on Noble, and our city manager at the time refused, citing maintenance as an issue. As mayor, I will not start with no, I will start with how do we make it happen?
I've talked to so many residents who live on streets that are cut-through streets, and they complain about the speed of cars on those streets. They have complained bitterly to city council to do something about those streets, and their complaints have fallen on deaf ears. It's time for the city to hear, to act, and to make our streets safer.
Thank you. We'll move on to the questions about city finances. And Kahlil, we'll start with you. How would you envision the budgeting process in your administration?
So I think that the first thing we need to recognize is that the way that cities generally do budgeting is sort of, you take last year's budget, there's a little black box that you put it in, you think about reductions for dangers of revenue or additions because of cost of living increases and that kind of thing. And it comes out the other end. And there is a process that isn't very public. I think that the process of developing the budget in the first place on the administrative side needs to be more public, needs to take participation and input from the residents as we determine what our priorities are and what activities we're funding to achieve those priorities. A participatory budgeting system and budgeting for outcomes is how I want to change our budgeting process in order to make sure that we are achieving the goals that we're setting for ourselves and funding the priorities that we say are priorities and taking those priorities directly from the input that the residents provide us.
As I understand participatory budgeting, it really involves residents who are making decisions about what the budget should be. I absolutely agree that the citizens should be advised, that there should be transparency. But in terms of the building of the budgets, we have to go to the experts. And right now, the experts are our city staff. And the interesting thing is we've got a new government structure, and we've got a new government. We will have new government leadership. So to be able to offer our department directors the opportunity to really think about what they can do to be efficient, effective, creative, and innovative in their departments, such that they are providing our residents with the very best services possible. But then we have to overlay it with taking a look at what were the trends, what happened last year, how do we reconcile those numbers? But I think it's really an interesting opportunity to do some new innovative budgeting. Yes, the residents should be advised, there should be transparency, but to think that the residents will know how to participate and make budget decisions, I think that is unrealistic.
Well, this is a moment where experience in this field matters. For the last 10 years, I've worked very closely with our council president, finance chair, to remake the budget recommendations that the county executive provides us during budget season on an over $1 billion budget each year. Cleveland Heights budget, general fund around 44 million, all funds budgeted a little over 80 million, maybe a little closer to 90. That's the work that we need to do. We need to provide opportunity for the residents to provide input into that budget making process.
Staying on city finances, Barbara, what changes to the 2022 budget might be needed for you to carry out what you're proposing in your mayoral campaign? Are you confident of having the 4 council votes necessary for these changes?
I have not had an opportunity to have had shared with me the 2022 budget. So I'm really not prepared to be able to offer an informed decision on the question.
All right, well, I'll provide a bit of what my answer is going to be. This year's council will create a budget that next year's council and administration will have to live within to the degree that we can't modify it to some degree as the year goes on. Now, what we do in budgeting is periodically, every so often, our finance director and our administration will come to council and request amendments to the budget document so that we can fund the changing priorities and changing needs of the city. That is the work that will likely be done during 2022, is those changes as we perceive the needs for change, and then changing the system of budgeting throughout that year, focusing on performance management and the performance stat system, and incorporating that into our budgetary process so that we are actually funding the goals that we are seeking. So I think the change we'll see will realize heavily in 2023, but 2022 will be full of change as well.
Do you have a response, Barbara?
No, I don't.
Okay. We'll move on to personal qualifications and aptitude for the job. So Kahlil, we'll start with you. What experience have you had in supervising a large staff? If elected, what would you do to overcome any gaps in your experience?
So I think that's one of the reasons why it was so important to craft a charter change where the professional management benefit that the city received from the city manager form of government is not lost. Now, just put out cards on the table. I've never been in a situation in employment where I had command and control authority, the authority to fire and hire. I've participated in hiring decisions. I've managed individuals in projects, but in terms of management of a large staff, I don't think that that's what we're looking for in a mayor when we made the change. If management was the goal, we could have stayed with the city manager form of government. But what I do think we're looking for is leadership. And that's something I have intense experience in, both in the city of Cleveland and in my role professionally. Leading departments that don't answer to me, to make changes in how they do work, to make it better, to make it work better for the people that we serve.
I agree that it's not about management, it's about courageous, experienced leadership. And some positions on-the-job training is not sufficient. There are some positions at the top level of executive role that you need to come in with the experience. I have managed budgets, I have worked with staff, I have recruited, hired. I worked for an executive search firm. We placed, recruited, screened, and placed top talent throughout Northeastern Ohio. So I understand the challenges that are involved in that. I understand what it means to be a supervisor, to hire, to coach, and sometimes even to fire staff. So I've had that experience. I've run staff that had over 1,000 people working with me and for me through a variety of other people. I've had small staff, and all of those gave me the experience and the skills that I need to be a strong leader, proponent, advocate, and coach for the staff of the city of Cleveland Heights.
All right, so government is specific. The work that we do and leadership in government is not necessarily transferable to other fields. And I think we've seen examples of people who wish to transfer from some other industry into a leadership position in government, and they don't understand what they're getting into. I've worked my way into leadership positions in government, in local government, and I think that that experience will benefit this city much more than any management experience could.
Barbara, 30 seconds.
I think we're done. I think I had the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is that all right?
So Barbara, we'll start with a new
Okay.
question for you.
All
Here we
right.
go.
Okay.
What was your involvement in Cleveland Heights civic affairs prior to entering the mayoral race? What in your career prepares you for a political office? If elected, what would you do to overcome any gaps in your experience?
One of the challenges of Cleveland Heights is its inaccessibility, I think. Several years ago, I reached out to the city manager because I wanted to talk to her about my concerns relative to Severance and what was not happening up there. We scheduled a lunch. Last minute, it had to be canceled. I reached out to her again. No response. Reached out a second time. No response. Reached out to council and got no response. And at that point, I threw up my hands, went back to my work at the YWCA, where I was trying to improve the quality of life for people all over the county. So didn't feel like there was a point of access until somebody who knew me, who knew something about a vacancy, invited me to be on the Citizens Advisory Committee, where I served. I then was elected to the Forest Hill Homeowner Association as a member of the Board of Trustees. I serve currently on the Racial Justice Task Force on both the Housing and the Safety Committee. So when I was given entrance, I got involved. The problem is the access is so difficult, and needs to be improved.
So I've lived in Cleveland Heights for 11 years. 8 of those 11 years have been spent in service to the city that we love. 2 years on Citizens Advisory Committee, 6 years, a little bit more, on council. A dramatic portion of my life in Cleveland Heights has been spent in service to our community. It can't go without saying that the majority of Ms. Danforth's experience in this civic arena in our city has taken place as we were discussing creating a mayor position. I think that it's important to note how recent, and frankly, given the explanation of your lack of service here, how easy it was for you to give up in connecting with Cleveland Heights and making yourself useful to our community.
I've lived in the city for 22 years, and like so many of the residents, we are disappointed in how Cleveland Heights is not moving forward. And so to say that you have been involved in city government for all this time, many of us feel that the city government has failed us, which is why they voted for a change, which is why they wanted to move from the city manager council to having somebody that was accountable to them to get things done. And so, yes, you've been involved, but the question is, to what end? How have you made my life better and the quality of my existence in Cleveland Heights better?
So Kahlil, this question is for you.
Thank you.
And this is the last prepared question, and then we'll move on to live questions from the audience. If not chosen as Cleveland Heights' first elected mayor, do you have plans for continuing to serve the city?
So if I am not elected, I will continue the work that I've done as the most senior member of council next year. I don't believe that is a likely probability, but in the event that I don't prevail in this election, I'll continue the work that I've done to fight housing discrimination, to force banks to maintain foreclosed homes, to ensure that our Division of Housing and Inspectional Services is using up-to-date technology in order to do their inspections and log them and track them and implement the Citizen Serve software that I proposed to the city and made sure that we participated in and helped with the funding with. There are a variety of ways that I have spent this 6 years improving this city, increasing political access to people who want to get on the ballot, making sure that council is more transparent and can't just hide an executive session for no reason. That's the work that I will continue to do and frankly, if I do prevail in this election as well.
Well, this campaign has been hard and challenging, but in some ways really exciting, because I have gone from house to house and from street to street and continue to meet just amazing people in this city, people who are anxious for a change, people who are also interested in getting to know each other better, interested in recognizing that we live side by side and now we need to learn how to work hand in hand. And so one of the things that I would be excited about is continuing to do work, intentional work around diversity and inclusion in our city. Because I think that particularly during this pandemic, we've retreated into our own little nuclear families. And now, as hopefully this pandemic begins to lift, we will be able to get out and get back into our neighborhoods and get back into our communities. And I look forward to that community building aspect. And so as we look at that work, as we look at the work of the Racial Justice Task Force, I look forward to continuing that work in the city that I think is so important.
Shall I? Okay. So I think it's important for as many residents to take a seat at the table. One of the things that I think will be important for me to do, whether or not I win this election, is to keep providing a platform for people who maybe don't immediately self-select for getting involved. I think that's one of the most important legacies, is figuring out how to pass that torch, how to invite people into the process, provide insights that I've learned over the course of this experience to people so that they can pick up where I left off as well. And I think that's how I really want to contribute as well.
Thank you. So we wanted to save some time for questions that came in during this evening. So we reserved about 10 minutes for live question and answer. So the first question from the audience is, what will make you a unique mayor? Will you bring new insights or a higher level of passion shown through your own involvement in the community? And Barbara, we'll start with you.
I think if you went back and asked any of the folks that have ever worked for me and my organizations, the one thing they'll say is that I have been passionate about the work that I was doing, whether working in the schools and working for children with learning disabilities, or working at the YWCA where we were empowering women and eliminating racism. Wherever I have worked, I've worked with great passion. That's the passion that I look forward to bringing to Cleveland Heights. You know, Cleveland Heights has a number of issues that need to be resolved. They need a number of projects that need to be moved forward. But Cleveland Heights has so many opportunities to be even better than it can be. I look forward to being its advocate. I look forward to being the out-facing marketing person that shares with everybody why Cleveland Heights is a great place to live. So yes, passion is what I have about this city, because it is that very passion that really compelled and convicted me to actually put myself out in this arena of politics to run for this position.
I think I've demonstrated a great deal of passion over my time on city council. And that passion is not just for the image of Cleveland Heights. It's for how we create those structures, that foundation that leads to the improvement in quality of life for everybody in our community. The bold action that I've been pushing council and the administration to take, often met with intense institutional resistance, but also punctuated by really great successes in collaboration with the community, making changes, turning people's ideas into concrete law, policies that affect the lives of people in our community. That's the thing I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about creating tangible effects in people's lives. I want to make Cleveland Heights the leader and the wonder that it has been. I want to make sure it's not just a veneer, but that structural underpinning is also there as well.
A city's image is important because the residents really have to believe in themselves. They have to believe that their city can get things done. They have to believe that we can be our very best. And so image is important, and therefore it's important to have a leader that is able to articulate the best of what our city has to offer, to recognize what the challenges are and to be about the business of correcting those challenges. We want to polish off our image and make it that shining star of Northeastern Ohio that it should rightfully be.
So Kahlil, we'll start with you. What opportunities do you see for regional collaboration between Cleveland Heights and other local governments to provide services or facilities?
All right, so this is going to be a much longer list than we could possibly cover in this. So let's just jump off. We could regionalize building department functions using the state code and work with communities around our area in order to provide that function in a more cost-effective way, a more comprehensive and reliable and consistent way as well. I think that my connections with county government would be invaluable. Working with the land bank on whose board I currently serve, working with the variety and not just governmental agencies, but organizations like Enterprise Community Partners or CHN to help revitalize housing and make sure our housing stays affordable while we revitalize our communities, while we match progress with preservation. That regional collaboration is important, and it's work that I've been doing at the county level, creating partnerships among cities through our First Suburbs Consortium and partnerships there, and direct service to cities as well.
Well, there's regional opportunities that are available to us right now that we have not taken advantage of. When I talked to Mayor David Weiss of Shaker Heights, when I've talked to Georgine Wheelo, Mayor of South Euclid, when I've talked to Michael Brennan, Mayor of University Heights, I've been told that there have been a number of initiatives that Cleveland Heights has been invited to the table that we just didn't show up. And so that's really unacceptable. We are contiguous communities, and that is a first step for us to be developing more comprehensive ways of doing business, whether it's about transportation, whether it's about some of the other quality of life issues. We need to be working first with the cities that are right around us. And then, yes, we need to look to the county. And I have worked with the county. I've worked with state government. I've worked with the federal government to bring resources to us. But let us start where we are right now. Let us take advantage of the opportunities that are immediately before us and move forward in that realm of regionalism.
I think it's important. This is one of the reasons why we changed this form of government. Opportunities that come to the administration and are dismissed without consideration. I think a really good example of that is that citizen serve software that we are currently implementing in our Division of Building and Inspectional Services. That program was funded by the county, and I congratulate myself and Councilman Tuma for shepherding that funding. And we almost lost out because we didn't participate. I had to force our administration to participate, and that is one of the reasons I'm running.
Barbara, this question is for you. Ideally, what would you like to see done with Severance Center?
Oh, Severance. That's one of the reasons I'm running, because we've got 62 acres of amazing property that just needs to be put into use. So there have been studies done, there have been consultants, the council has hired consultants, and we've had studies, and we have all kinds of ideas. So first of all, what I want to do is to go back and just really make out a list of all the things that the residents want out of Severance. And again, as we talked about the process, we look at the wish list about what's possible. Then we talk to the developers, we talk to the finance people, and then we come up with a list of maybe 3 or 4 possibilities. But I see things that are just not what we've usually thought about. I was talking to Chris Ronayne down at the CEO of the University Circle that's done amazing development. He talks about having opportunities for artificial intelligence and clean manufacturing and medical equipment, 3D printing, and all sort of new kinds of areas. And that's exciting, as well as housing, many opportunities for Severance.
All right, so I see a 3 parallel track approach to dealing with Severance, and this will, I assure you, be a long-term program. So strap in, this is gonna be a ride. I think at the same time, as we are talking with residents about what we wanna see at Severance, in the wide variety of uses that we can combine in order to create a vibrant space there, from green space to additional municipal functions to institutional, medical, and educational use to commercial use. The possibilities are vast because the space is vast. I think primarily we need to get rid of that sea of asphalt. In one way or another, we need to regreen a great deal of that property in order to mitigate some environmental concerns and benefit the community in that way as well. But we need to focus on what the residents want, focus on what is feasible for developers, and focus on getting the current owner to be more cooperative with the plans and desires of the city. That will take a 3 parallel track approach.
Well, the current owner is a real challenge, and we all have heard the stories about the owner and how difficult he has been and how he is in a business model that works for him, and he's wholly unmotivated. And so it's going to take some courageous leadership, someone ready and willing to have face time with this owner and really help him understand that we are going to take this property back, that we are going to have developers ready and able to buy the property at a reasonable amount. But this is going to take some courageous leadership and face time to make that happen.
So thinking about development and how you incentivize development, what is your position on asking our public schools to grant tax increment financing? Other cities, Lakewood, Warrensville Heights, do not ask the schools to give up income for development purposes.
So I'd like to point out that all incentives for development are situation specific. When you have a blanket approach to development, you are either giving too much or not giving enough, and you're foregoing opportunities for improving your community. So every single development deal is unique, and it deserves the attention and the expertise given in order to find the right balance of public and private investment. So Lakewood is not Cleveland Heights. And Cleveland Heights has its own challenges and opportunities. And so in Cleveland Heights, I think we have been judicious in working with the school district in order to provide incentives for development while maintaining, I think, a dedication to improving what we're giving to the school district. And Top of the Hill, for all its flaws, I think is a prime model of that. The parking lot that existed provided $20,000 a year to the school district. Even though we're using tax increment financing, $400,000 a year will be going to the school district as a result of that development. And I think that's important to make sure of.
Cleveland Heights has a reputation among developers as being very hard to work within. Projects are slow to start, projects are slow to move through all the approvals, that it's just hard to do business in Cleveland Heights. Well, I'd suggest that one of the incentives is that we correct that problem, that we make development projects efficient, effective, and make it such that developers want to come here. They want to make investments here. They want to do business here. So I think really that's one of the first things that we need to start on before we start giving away money, before we start negotiating, even on the individual projects, before we start that negotiation. We need to excite developers about doing business here. We want them to be proud to say that they have a Cleveland Heights project moving. It's moving on time, on budget, and it's working well. That's where I think we start with those incentives.
I think it's wonderful to speak those words, but to know how to make it happen is an extremely crucial part of the puzzle here. Process improvement in economic development is work that I've done, specifically in the Department of Development in Cuyahoga County, improving collections, improving the processes that we use to aid developers. I work with developers on a consistent basis, shepherding projects through funding, through completion. This is the work that I do professionally, and it's work that will benefit Cleveland Heights in this exact field.
So Barbara, this question will start with you. And following with that theme of involving schools, do you think that as mayor, you should have a role as advocate on the impact of state policies on local districts serving Cleveland Heights, University Heights, and East Cleveland, as well as other schools in the city?
Absolutely. And again, I go back to the conversation that I had with Mayor Kirby, that she wants strong support. She wants somebody that goes with the parents down to Columbus and testify on behalf of the horrible finance process that punishes our public schools. She wants me, the mayor, to be able to go down and talk with legislators to really advocate on their behalf. So absolutely, the mayor does have a responsibility because public schools are critical to the success of a city. If a city is to grow and thrive, we need to have young families coming in. We need to have young families who are excited about our public schools. We need to have young families with young children who get excited about being in a diverse population within our school districts. And so if a city is to grow and thrive, we have to have a strong public school system, and therefore the city and the school district really have to work hand in hand around issues of advocacy.
So I think it is important for the mayor to be a credible advocate for public education. Public education is one of the most democratizing institutions in the history of humanity. We cannot have a true democracy without meaningful public education provided to everyone with no question about who's coming in the door. I am that advocate, and I will be that advocate as mayor. I intend to follow the model set by our neighbor, Mayor Brennan, traveling to Columbus as a mayor of a community that relies on public education to educate our children. But I also want to be an advocate here at home. Right now, we're in a situation where our school population doesn't match our city's population. And I think that that's a crucial and difficult conversation that we need to have. Being an advocate both here at home and in Columbus is crucial in order to strengthen our public schools.
30 seconds. I want to travel not only to Columbus, but I want to travel to our schools, and I want to engage with our students. We had an opportunity on last Friday at Heights High School to be in a forum, and it was great to talk to our young people, but I want to go back to our schools, and I want to talk about their responsibility as citizens in our city. I want to be able to help them see their own potential and their future. So yes, I want to go to Columbus, but I also want to invest right here with our schools and help our students see the best that they can be.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our viewers for sending in questions. There were so many good questions. Unfortunately, we couldn't fit them all in, but please continue to ask the candidates questions until Election Day on November 2nd. So we have one final question. We've covered a lot, but I want to provide this opportunity to each candidate to ask, is there something that you haven't heard from your opponent that you would like them to respond to? So we'll do the same format. We'll start with Kahlil. Is there something that you would like to ask Barbara that you haven't heard her speak about, and that she will have 30 seconds to, or a minute to respond, and you will have 30 seconds to respond?
Well, I think there's been a lot of community conversation about the campaign providing sort of the slogan of 30 years of executive experience leading to qualification for this office. And it has been brought to my attention, and I think it's important to get this out in the open. This might be our last chance to do so in a public way, to discuss sort of how you view your record of success or failure in your last position, and what that might mean in terms of stewardship of the finances, stewardship of the employee management relationship. The experience at Summit Academy is telling. And I hope that you can openly and honestly address that.
It is telling, and I'm proud of the work that I did there. When I was hired, it was in a very difficult situation as a result of years of mismanagement. I had a staff that was not open and honest with me. And it was a very difficult situation. But the school did amazing work, and I facilitated a lot of improvements in that organization. And frankly, contrary to what you may have heard, that probably isn't true, I am very proud of the work that I did at Summit Academy.
We'll let you have a response, 30 seconds.
You know, I think I'm going to forego the response.
Sure. So Barbara, do you have a question that you would like to pose that maybe you haven't heard your opponent respond to?
Yes, I'd like to go back to council meeting of last week. And I was really particularly disturbed at your efforts, or what appeared to be your efforts to stall or block the infill housing project on Caledonia. And I guess I just want to understand why, when we have a developer who has been in the community and has, fed the hungry in that community, who has worked with the elderly in that community, and now wants to do infill housing, why you wanted to slow or block that project? And now, in all fairness, you did at the end, once your colleague had severely rebuked you, you did vote for it. But that was after listing 4 reasons why it should be stalled or stopped.
Okay, so I think this is another example of sort of a lack of understanding and experience with development projects. It is important to recognize that, for one, StartRight CDC, which for a variety of reasons has a troublesome history with Cleveland Heights, but as you said, feeds the hungry in a neighborhood where people need food. I think that my track record of voting to approve CDBG funds for StartRight's food pantry, for renovation of houses, that speaks for itself, because when a project is good, I'm interested in pursuing it. But when a project has problems, as that project, when it was presented to us, did, completely out of whack profit for investors, 20-30% on the project, with an outsized amount of investment, public investment from the city, and a complete lack of a track record in building houses at all from the CDC, it is reasonable for someone with experience in development to have concerns. Staff addressed most of my concerns and we moved forward.
Do I have a response?
You have 30 seconds to respond.
Lack of expertise in development was not the issue. StartRight provided to council as early as last December, beginning to put the plans together, the MOU and all that. So now we are 9 months down the road. And at that meeting, that was the last meeting. If you had all these concerns, why weren't they voiced 6 months ago,
They
5 months
were.
ago? Well, yes, they were when you tried to block it at the MOU process.
I tried to
This is my
improve
this is my response.
and I did improve.
Well, this is my response. My response to you is you waited until the last minute to try to change the standards, to try to put in new regulations, asking for additional information. You had plenty of time to do this, and yet you waited till the very last minute to try to stop it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know this has been a long night, but each candidate will now have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Going in reverse order from the coin toss, we'll begin with Barbara.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters. I want to thank Future Heights. I know that these debates are challenging to put forward, and especially when in the midst of a pandemic. And thank you for your excellent moderation of this debate. So what do I want you to remember about me? Well, I want you to remember that I have been a hardworking candidate, and I will be a hardworking mayor. That I have 30 years of executive leadership experience. Now, Kahlil talks about knowing, having great expertise, and I respect his expertise in housing and in development, but that's not the expertise that the leader of a $62 million city needs to have, because a good leader will hire smart people who have that expertise. And a good leader will be able to coach and work with those leaders, because the mayor can't do that work in a hands-on capacity. So that 30 years of experience, it is in bringing talented teams together, having them work together, having them collaborate together, and also knowing how to collaborate and work cooperatively with the council, to engage our residents. All of these things are going to be necessary, and things that I have done as an executive leader. I know that to effectively lead a city with great diversity, there has to be intentional work done to create understanding and unity. And in the YWCA, where we were in eliminating racism and empowering women, I did that work. You see, I'm not part of the city's current political structure. I'm a resident who loves the city, who has the experience to create a vision for what our city can be and the skills to make that vision a reality. I want to be the mayor of the city in which all are welcome and all are proud for what our city will become. Vote Barbara Danforth for mayor. Thank you.
What we have here is a real contrast, and I think we have all seen that in the answers tonight. I bring fresh ideas and experience in a modern 21st century government. I've been a responsible steward, and I've maintained the public's trust. I want our city to prosper, and I'm confident that my plans will lead this community forward because I have shown unequivocal dedication to smart, progressive initiatives that work. My professional and civic life has been dedicated to making a positive difference and ensuring that government is accountable to the people it serves. There is significant risk in handing over the opportunity to lead to someone who doesn't have the chops or thinks that mayor is a part-time job or a cheerleader position. I understand the weight of the responsibility before me. I know that the community is looking for a leader with integrity who will represent them faithfully, and I've proven that I have what it takes to improve the quality of life for every Cleveland Heights resident. I would be honored to have your vote for mayor of Cleveland Heights. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. So this concludes our inaugural mayoral debate for Cleveland Heights Mayor. I'd like to thank our candidates and all of our volunteers who made this evening possible, for all of you for attending. Don't forget to get your copy of the Voter's Guide, which is inside the October issue of the Heights Observer. It's an excellent resource, and it's available in many local businesses and institutions all around town. And most importantly, please remember to vote on November 2nd to make your voice heard. Thank you so much.